it turns out like there's like a cactus inside sometimes, where we can be craving love and we want love to come to us. But if somebody gets close enough, there's these defended walls and prickles and sharp objects. They're like, don't you dare come in here, even as we're begging them to be closer to us and love us. And so I think it's a developmental delay a little bit when you never really got loved properly. And maybe some people were learning this when they were 16 and 22.
We're learning it in our middle age, basically. Yeah. So basically, I'm in a place where I'm on all the apps, right? Tinder and all of them, and something always goes wrong. So I'm in that phase of just waiting. So what do you advise when, for example, I keep hooking up with guys who are either they turn out to be fake or something. So I'm like, oh my God, am I not supposed to meet my guy right now? So what's your take on this kind of phase, your advice?
Oh, and I remember we talked about this when we talked before too. So I think if you're trying to meet your guy on an app, there's going to be a lot of fish in the sea there. And I wouldn't put too much meaning on any one of them not being the one. That's going to happen a lot.
Gotcha.
The thing about when you organically meet somebody in real life is it narrows it way down to qualities that are attractive to you, for better and worse. Like you might be attracted in a self-destructive way to some aspect of somebody, but it's also going to help you understand some social cues about who are they? What are they like? Are they polite to you? Can they look you in the eye? Are they good people? And so that's the trouble with apps, is immediately anybody can pretend to be anybody they want, and you're going to have to do a lot of work to figure that out by meeting them in person. How is it for you meeting people in real life? Do you have those opportunities?
Yeah, it's funny. After our first chat, by the way, which happened a couple of months ago, was 2 days before my birthday, and on my birth, and you advised me to write a list of characteristics, right? So on the top, things that are like non-negotiables. For example, one of them was that he has to love animals. He mature, has a calming effect on me. La la la. So I go out with my friends on my birthday, and Anna, you wouldn't believe it. Like, this is a bar with loud music and people are dancing. In walks this guy with his dog. Nobody brings their pets, and sits right next to me. Mature. As it turns out, long story short, he's with a partner, but he fit all the criteria that I literally wrote down on that paper after our chat. I'm like, okay, so it's manifestation is happening, but it's like there's a kind of a distortion in it. It's like, okay, he's perfect, but not really. But So I felt really good and I felt very calm. So I'm like, okay, I want something like that. But he wasn't the one, but
Well, at least you got a little validation. Like you actually can expect and want and get things like that you really do love about your hypothetical man. Did you remember to write down that he's single and available?
Shit, by the way, it's funny you say that. Of course I didn't, but I thought that would be a given. But yes, of course.
I don't know why it's like a magic wand like that, but it is like, okay, so that was your reminder. Don't forget, this is a very important criteria.
Oh my God, that's funny. Yeah. Yes.
Single, available. Yeah, because I used to get that one all mixed up again and again. And,
That makes
and I finally learned, be clear.
Exactly. And this is a very important characteristic for people like us and everyone who follows your channel. It's actually because we've all had trouble with that kind of thing in the past, right? So that is a characteristic that we should define and say, yes, he needs to be available and ready. And yeah. It's almost like that. Yeah. What do I do in this phase where I'm really eager and anxious to meet someone, but I know I don't want to just walk into an unavailable man or some messy situation. It's a very tricky phase. So what's your advice for this phase?
It takes a lot of patience, doesn't it? Because part of you really wants to be in a relationship, but what you don't want to do is the same old thing where you just take whatever is available because it's better than nothing. Because now you already have that experience. It's not better than nothing. No relationship is not nothing at all. It's freedom, it's joy, it's fun. It's closer to true love than you've ever been, because when you're in a bad relationship, you're a million miles away from true love. The intermediary step from a bad relationship to the love of your life is being single. So entering into singlehood and just being there with it is a good step. and a positive forward thinking step. And so this is your chance now to start having your experience, and maybe it'll happen quickly. You've noticed, like, it happens quicker than you think it will when you're clear about what you want. And when you're willing to say no to the guy who does not match what you know you need. You know you need it. Why would you sell yourself short? Then all your emotional energy, all your love, all your sexuality just gets all tied up, and it's not available to just shine outward towards someone who is going to be wonderful for you. So you're just letting yourself shine. Don't think of it as nothing. Don't think of it as waiting. Think of it as shining. Just shining. And then you can begin to let information come to you. And this is a really fun experiment. And I know you're a very secure person. I think you have a lot of self-affinity. You love yourself. You're able to do this. You're not desperate. And I remember when we made a video before, like, people adored you. So you're not going to have any problem attracting. The challenge for you is to just sit on your throne and kind of see what people present to you. You know, well, what have you got? How do you feel? What is your vision?
Wow, thank you. That's amazing to hear. By you telling me I'm secure, it reminds me that I'm not insecure. Do you know what I mean? Like, you need that reminder. That's wonderful. Okay, let's say we are at the next stage and I meet this guy. Given that we have PTSD, what do we do at that phase where things are supposed to be electric and crazy and sexy? And yeah, what do we do then?
Yeah, there's so much programming there. We've been hardwired by so much pop music and expectation, or you as a gay man, it's like, oh, gay culture. You know, people say this to me all the time. It's like, no, Anna, gay culture means, you know, that we always have sex, you know, whenever. And I'm like, well, you can do that. Everybody can do that if they want to. You can participate in the common culture if you want to, get your experience. And just if that ends up being really painful for you or causing you to get bonded with people you don't actually want to be with, try it like your grandparents. Try it like they did it. They did it for different reasons. But this is what my grandmother told me. She was born in 1909. Wow. And she used to just be like, oh, Anna, what are you doing? And I would think, oh, she doesn't know anything. She's just an old lady. But the older I get, the more I realize, like, if I had just followed her advice all along. So her idea, she would just, you know, when I'd be dating a new guy, she'd say, I'd be like, oh, I'm crazy about him. He's so wonderful. Look at him. I can't wait for you to meet him. He's so charming. She'd be like, well, how much money does he make? And I think, oh, she's so materialistic. But you know who I was dating? I was dating guys who didn't work. I was dating guys who couldn't support themselves, and, you know, getting like pulled into these codependent relationships where I would sort of like, well, I'd sort of like help them until it was time, you know, that they would come around and become, this is always the game. Bonding with somebody, and then you sleep with them. Now you're like psychologically, now you're like married, right? Because you have PTSD, right? And then retroactively having to try to change them into the guy you imagined they were when you first met them. And then all it is just being like a horrible shrew, you know, trying to like force somebody to be somebody they're not, based completely on your own idea. It's totally selfish. It's totally selfish and self-centered, and nobody likes it. And it kills love. So especially as people who had trauma, we just go a little bit slower so that we can get our information before we bond. And this is the most difficult thing, is delaying sex a little bit. That's the secret. That's the secret. Now, I don't know. You're a man. Men seem to be a little better at this than women, but men with CPTSD seem to be just like me.
Yeah, I don't know about that, because also gay men, you have to add this other layer. And I don't know, for me, like, whenever people start saying men and women, I always zone out. Maybe because I'm a drag artist, and gender is like, feels like such a surface thing. I'm like, huh? What do you mean? But I feel what you're feeling, even though I'm a man, like.
Yeah, without even having to label it, just ask your soul, you know, what do I really need right now? What do I really need? You know, how much time do I need to get to know somebody before it's safe to open the floodgate of everything that happens for me once I have sex with somebody? That everything that happens emotionally, and to my expectations, and to that like tender part inside that needs to be loved and not rejected. How can I time all of this so that I'm a little bit stronger for that when that happens. Because all that attraction, you're talking about the magic sparkle, you know, when the sparks are flying, and it is so exciting, and it's part of what's supposed to happen to bring us together with somebody. And it's so wonderful. And so if you listen to pop music and you watch TV, then right away it comes together, and it just comes together just so great. And you know they're the one, and everybody has sex, and then they're together forever. But, you know, in our experience, I don't know, well, I won't say our experience. In my experience, what that led to instead was this round and round on a merry-go-round of getting all attached to somebody, getting disenchanted, trying to change them, getting all freaked out, having a horrible breakup, and repeating the cycle again and again. And those repeated breakups that were so demoralizing, of just like feeling like, oh, what an idiot I am, and why couldn't I see it coming? And now everybody can see, you know, what a terrible choice I made. All of that was so demoralizing for me. It just was kind of taking me down a little more each time it happened. And I knew that if I was going to have a great love in my life and a real partner, that I had to first stop all that sort of like degradation of myself.
Yeah.
That's not love. And that's why it doesn't feel like love, because it's not. Never satisfying. That's not what we want. We want to leave a little, like, we just leave that space.
Like
we be ourselves, just always working on ourselves, being true to ourselves, being our good, sweet, lovable selves, and let it come to us a little bit. Just let it come. Let it present itself. And yes, you know, bad actors are going to hit on you or something. We're not talking about that. You'll know it when you see it, because you're alert, because you're coming out of the fog of your own denial, of your own self-attack, of your own objectification of love, of people, and just allowing yourself to feel love rise up in your heart. You know it when you feel it. You're like, wait a second, something really important is happening here. And then it gets all mixed up with other things. And that's the hard part you're talking about. But the more you practice right now, just kind of sitting on your throne and observing and not rushing in, the more you're going to have some strength to be selective about where you decide to go be close.
Okay, so let's say we made it through now in this phase, right? I'm with the boyfriend, we're dating. How to handle the honeymoon stage when you've come from trauma?
There's like these crocodiles in the water when you're in the honeymoon phase, as somebody with CPTSD. And they come up and tell you things like, you don't deserve this. And that urge to self-sabotage comes in. Or, you know, I was quite surprised. I always thought when I finally got married, that a whole bunch of this pain would be resolved, it'd be gone, you know, the whole thing about never being chosen by a good man, you know. And then when I thought, that'll all be done. I'll just be normal now. But it wasn't like that. So much comes up of the worthiness. And I think it's a developmental delay a little bit when you never really got loved properly. And maybe some people were learning this when they were 16 and 22.
We're learning it in our middle age, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, we're learning it later, and we can learn it faster, but learning how to be comfortable after being hurt so many times, to let somebody in even closer, and to start doing things like sharing money and sharing a place to live, and bringing them into your circle of friends and your family, and all those places where it's going to be so humiliating if you get hurt again like you did before. And so there's this protectiveness there that you haven't had a chance to. It hasn't had any oxygen. It's covered with spider webs. It's like this old lady attic up under the roof there. It's leaking, you know, it's this big mess. And so all of a sudden you enter into that space, and there's all these defenses and fears there. So that's why I use techniques to just keep moving those fears right on through. They're going to come and they can go. And some people use an approach to healing where they want to talk about the fears. Whatever you do, don't try to make your partner talk to you about your fears, because your fears about things, I'm not saying don't ever talk about them, but if you have CPTSD, there's just this constant level of like anxiety and anger that just sort of pops up in reaction to life, fear and resentment, I call it. So what you can get into is processing death, where it's like 10 o'clock at night, and it's like, honey, I just feel like you didn't really mean it when you said you love me tonight. And then the conversation begins. And next thing you know, it's 4 a.m. Everybody's crying. It's gotten heavy and it's gone round and round. And I would say when you talk about something and it goes on for even 20 minutes, you're processing. And I mean in a circle. You know, some people say processing and they mean like working out a problem. But you know what? When it's not going anywhere, that's because the issue isn't real. What we're doing is taking a fear we have. I have fear you don't love me. I have fear you're not going to be there for me. We're projecting it on the other person. And no matter what they say, no matter what they do, it doesn't fix the fear because it's a fear. It's not actually something they did to us. Yeah. And that's the illusion. It's like, you have all the power to make me feel happy or sad. That's the illusion. And that's how you know you're doing it, is conversations go round and round. So when that's happening, if you're having hard feelings, if you can go off and use techniques, I put them on paper. My fear, my resentment, I put them on paper. I ask for them to be removed. I rest a little in meditation. And then I have about 10% as much that I need to talk to him about. There's just not that much I needed to talk about. Sometimes I have things I need to talk to him about. That's legit. But not nearly as much as goes through my mind. And that's that used to be my mistake. It's just dumping it. I'm not saying you never talk, but if you have CPTSD, you're probably loading too many issues onto the plate and going, here, fix this for me. And no one can. That's just too much. It's not just too much to ask. It's not even real. It's not even real.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, it's not even real. Yes.
Yeah. And some people, especially if they're a little codependent, they'll try to fix it for you. Some couples end up with that dynamic where one party is very invested, like, I want to be the one I'm going to heal you. You know, you've been through all this trauma. I'm going to be the one who loves you through it. And then they take on that role, but it's a thankless job because it will lead to a person with CPTSD sort of rushing in and going, really? You're going to heal me? Because it didn't work today, honey. I am not feeling good. You are letting me down.
Yeah, that really hit a nerve, because for me, when I started this channel and I called myself In Denial, like the whole idea of doing this drag journey is waking up from being in denial. Okay, so let's say now, okay, we've made it past the honeymoon stage, right? That heat is not really there anymore, and just everyday life sinks in, you're paying bills, and so there's obviously a lot of insecurities in that phase as well. Any advice or any...
What's so special about this time is that finally the worry that people showing love for you is really just because they want to have sex with you. You finally get to experience love daily that is the kind of love that is there whether there's sex or not. And that love shows up in things like, I don't think this is anything you could use, but my husband's been like, he made a wooden box out of oak for all the pet food.
Sweet.
It's such overkill. It's this beautiful quality wood. He's learning woodworking right now. And there's a compartment for canned cat food, and there's a compartment for loose cat food. And then there's a compartment for bird seed and a compartment for all the little nuts and things that the squirrels like. And it's sitting in our pantry, and it's like beautiful and stained, and he put all this work into it. And I felt so loved by this thing that he made, because he just wants to make the space that we live just right. And I've been complaining about the cans of cat food just lying all over the floor everywhere, stacked in the windowsill. And he made this beautiful thing. And I felt really loved by that.
Why did you say I can't use that? That's so beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Use it if you like.
Yeah.
It's the things that make me feel loved. And the other things that make me feel loved are when he tells me what's difficult for him, when he talks to me about the tiniest things that are painful for him. I'm married to a really stoic man, and he often thinks that people are too emotional, but when I see what makes him emotional and he tells me about it, I feel really loved. Like he just lets me know. He just lets me see right into the center of his heart.
Oh,
and
I'm happy for you. It inspires me to have that. Yeah.
I put a picture of my wedding up on Facebook the other day, and talked about that, like coming ashore, like finally coming to shore. It's this picture where I'm hugging him right after the ceremony, and I have this look like I just landed on the sand on an island after being lost at sea, just like, oh.
Beautiful.
And there's an aspect of it that felt like that, and I couldn't put the picture up for 8 years because I used to be afraid it made me look desperate or like I expected too much from it. But that's exactly what it's been like. It's like I finally have a home. I have a home, and I've had that feeling all my life. I want to go home.
Oh yes. I can't help but think of that song, you know, the iconic one. I want to know what love is. I want you to show me. And this man is not here. So how do I call him now into my life? That's yeah.
Oh, how to call him into your life. Well, if you have any history of using magical thinking to justify being in terrible relationships, I would suggest don't even think of it like that. Think of yourself more as a data analyst. I know that's not very romantic, but letting information come to you, and then using, like, I know you wrote down, like, what do you really, really want? Before some guy is already like clouding your vision and you're changing what you want to fit what he is, you have that reference. And so now this is like this joyous period where you get to sort of see who shows up and think about it and reflect on what you really want. And you can enjoy people even though they're not the one, but you don't give your heart. You just don't give your heart. You're just like, this is the time to protect it, to nurture it, to just let it grow, let it be shiny. And that's how he's going to find you, is through the radiance of that heart of yours shining out from you. That's how he's going to find you. You don't have to call him. You have to be you. You have to be you in the most radiant way possible. Wow. And it'll surprise you how much you don't have to work for this when you put the effort where it belongs, which is on yourself. And then, now this is where you hear this a lot in unhappy relationships. My needs aren't being met. All of that, like, those are people who never got, full and shiny and healed in themselves, not getting their needs met by somebody else, which are not, somebody else couldn't have met, can't heal your trauma, can't solve the problem that you have a big wound from childhood. They can't solve that. That said, though, I will say that this deep kind of committed love is so healing. It's so healing. Like, you're not supposed to say that, but it is so healing. And I talked to you about how when I first got married, I had a lot of upsets, a lot of like old pain was coming up and a lot of projection. But at the same time, because my husband loves me and stayed with me, and he didn't like when I was unreasonable, but he loves me and stays with me and works it through with me, that having one person in my life do that, because that's how many I've had do that, one. Yeah. It's so healing. It's just given me a space to heal. It's given me a healing space like I never had before. But sometimes, especially at the beginning, what that healing looks like is a lot of sort of crying and, railing against life. Like, why is this so hard? And it's hard because it's like the greatest accomplishment of all. That's what we're here to do, is learn to love one another.
But this deserves a pause, what you just said, because it feels like it's not, double-edged sword is probably not the right word, but this idea that, yeah, you're not supposed to expect the other person to be your healer. That's not their job. But yes, being loved and loving and being in this kind of fulfilling relationship is healing. So it's kind of like a bit, maybe it's confusing to a PTSD person.
Everything's confusing to a PTSD person.
Oh wow, yes.
All this and all the people, like, everybody's talking about love and they're talking about commitment, or they say you just need to find the right person, or you just need to find a good therapist. But when you have PTSD, like, you have no reference point for what is that, and there's not like a database or something that you can go to. Feel like, what is a good person? So I always think of it, this is our delayed development. We're growing up now. We're growing up fast. And this is how we do it. We learn how to process our fear and resentment, not just put it on another person and keep blowing up relationships with all of that, but keep processing the feelings, and then have friends who are not your partner who you can talk to about things, who can give you a reality check sometimes, like, am I just being unreasonable? Am I just being a brat here?
I was just about to ask you, like, is friends a good place to practice this stuff? Friendships?
Well, it is, but there's stuff that's only going to come up in romance because of that. I don't know. It's just like this place that we're born with that is waiting for that person to come and be that person.
I do want to take just a moment to let's define for our listeners or viewers, like, what is PTSD? Because we referenced it so much. Like, can we just recap that a little bit, maybe, for people?
Well, so a lot of people have heard of PTSD, which is what we associate with people who have been in a war, who come back and have nightmares and flashbacks. And that was popularized in the last 30 years. But what's really kind of new on the scene is our understanding of complex PTSD. And that's the kind that comes not necessarily from a specific event, but from chronic intense stress. And that could be stuff like abuse in childhood, neglect. Neglect is a big one that has been underestimated. Getting bullied all the time, that sort of thing. So ongoing stress. It could be a medical thing, like, some kids have been in the hospital for years. That's a lot of trauma, and it adds up. And some of us under chronic stress, not everybody will develop complex PTSD. And so really, I mean, until recently, and still many, many people out there still believe that childhood trauma causes merely psychological problems, but there are brain changes that can happen, especially, who knew, from neglect. Like when you're a baby and your parents are not like dealing with you and connecting with you and going da 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 right back at you, that your brain has to compensate for that. And it compensates for that by checking out, putting up walls. People are asking me, why do I keep making the same mistake over and over again? Why do I freak out and choke right before a test? Why do I keep dating guys that are not available? But I always go into it thinking it's great. So why is all this happening? And it turns out it's a super predictable pattern that happens to almost anybody who went through what we went through. And once you know, like, it's not your fault, so much is lifted off of your shoulders with it. And you start to realize, okay, so what is it then? Well, fundamentally, it's a brain injury. It's a brain injury. And the good news about that is there are so many parts of our neurology that we can heal, or we can do workarounds. And so when I talk to people about romance who have been through trauma, let's talk about workarounds. Let's talk about some guardrails you can use so that when your PTSD starts influencing the way you're seeing things, or pushing you towards people who are not good for you, part of you knows it, but part of you can't detect it right away. So you use some guardrails on yourself, some workarounds to just go, well, I'm going to go really slowly. I'm going to make sure that I get to know somebody for this amount of time before I decide to get involved with them, because I need a little more time to see the red flags sometimes. Well, did we cover everything that you're going to need for your lip sync?
I think so, yeah. Because this show, this is so meta. If what I'm about to say makes it into the show, will be so next level. If you happen to be at the show, hopefully it's going to be in the second half of April. How amazing would it be if you were actually sitting in the audience while I lip sync to you?
I would love that. I would love that. Oh my gosh. Well, the thought has occurred to me. I want to be at your show. I'm going to be, just for the record, I'm going to be in Europe in August. Now, I would love to end up in your show. I've had that picture in my mind too.
Yeah, and it's going to be a very special show because it's all going to be about love and daring to love. So I'm going to be lip syncing to you, but I'm not going to try to look like you because I don't do, like, I just do it with like Amy Winehouse or like Britney, but like when I did Ian LaVincent, for example, I didn't try to look like her. So it's just more about taking the essence, but I'm going to be dressed like a bride a little bit.